Hello, this is the sixth lecture on finite volume method, and today we are going to start a discussion on solution of problems involving convection and diffusion. So far we've looked at scenarios where we looked at solution of a diffusion equation or an equation which had which was predominantly diffusion based, and we had this equation where this convective term u d phi dx was omitted, which is essentially created by the flow of a fluid. Okay, now what we are going to do is we are going to seek a solution for a general scalar phi in the presence of a given flow field. And by a given flow field, what we mean is that the velocity and density are, let's say, known somehow. Okay, they're somehow known. We don't concern ourselves as of now how they are known, but let's say that these are known to us. Now the scalar phi could actually represent temperature, it could represent enthalpy, it could represent concentration. Okay, now it is not so straightforward to include convection in the final discretization equation, and it is also something that you should know that in nature diffusion occurs alongside convection, and so diffusion and convection have an inseparable connection, and so we need to handle them as one unit, and that is the whole purpose of this lecture, to give you the first idea of how convection and diffusion are tackled together. So what we'll do is we'll start with a steady 1D convection and diffusion scenario, and let's consider that in this 1D situation we have the source term to be 0. Okay, so the governing equation that we will have will be d by dx of rho u phi is d by dx of gamma d phi dx. Okay, further we will also have the continuity equation because we have fluid flow. So the continuity equation in the steady form will be d by dx of rho u to be 0, which essentially means that rho u is constant. Okay, now to solve this equation, let's go back to our grid. So let's say we have a 1D domain, we have a grid point P, a grid point E, grid point W, and let's put the faces. So this is phase W, we have phase E. Let's say the size of the control volume is delta x, and we have distances given by delta x small w and delta x small e. Now for starters, let's just assume that the distance of the point P from the phase E, let's say, is delta x e by 2, which essentially means that the phase E is midway between P and E, and we can do the same thing on the west phase side. So let's say this distance is delta x w by 2, and so w is also midway between P and W. And so this is just something that we are assuming now. Okay, this is an assumption that I'm making, but it will help me show one key aspect here. Okay, now let's integrate the original equation that we had, equation 1. Let's integrate this over the CV. So what will we get? We get integral d by dx of rho u phi dx from w to e is integral from w to e d by dx of gamma d phi dx, and now I can write this as rho u phi at e minus rho u phi at the w phase will be gamma d phi dx at e minus gamma d phi dx at w. Now the right hand side is something that we have already looked at, or we already know the way or the concepts to linearize this part, so I am not going to repeat this. Okay, have already been presented, but what I'm more interested to look at is the left hand side. Okay, it is this side, that how do we simplify this part. Remember that we are going to write rho u phi at east face, right? So but we don't know the value of phi at the east face. We know the value of phi at grid points. Similarly, velocity is also something that would be available at the grid points. Okay, but let's not concern ourselves with that thing so much right now. Rather, now I'm going to choose, or I'm going to assume something about how to write phi at east and west faces, or east and the east face of the cell and the west face of the cell. So let's say that we assume a linear variation of phi between P and E and let's say W and P. And this is essentially the same formulation that we have applied for the diffusive term. When we simplify the diffusive term here, right, we will again write this as gamma E d phi dx will be written as phi E minus phi P by delta xe. So that same concept I'm going to use, I'm saying, for the convective term. So what it means is, now because the grid point is exactly halfway, or the cell face is exactly halfway between points W and P, I could write phi W to be half of phi P plus phi W, and we can write phi E to be half phi P plus phi E. Now let me put this back into the earlier and into this equation. So what we'll have is half of rho u at the east face into phi E plus phi P minus half rho u W phi P plus phi W would be gamma E phi E minus phi P by delta xe minus gamma W phi P minus phi W by delta xw. Okay, now I'm going to define two new variables. Okay, and these variables you will now see very commonly through the rest of the convection and convection formulation. So I'm going to define f to be rho into u and d to be gamma by delta x. So f is essentially a convective conductance. Okay, and D is a diffusion conductance. Conductance is essentially the opposite of resistance, okay, or the inverse of resistance. Now, these two variables have very special properties. For example, first of all, both have the same units, okay. F and D have the same units, and you may want to verify. So they have the same dimensions. Secondly, D will always be greater than 0 because it is a ratio of a property, a physical property, which is, let's say in this case, could be the conductivity, or it could be the diffusion coefficient, okay, or it could be the kinematic viscosity. So it's mu by delta x, right? So it's gamma by delta x. So D is always greater than 0, but F can actually be between plus and minus infinity, because F depends on the flow. So if the velocity there is positive, then F becomes positive. If the velocity is negative, okay. So now let's go back to this equation and rearrange. Okay, so what will we get? So we'll get half Fe into phi E plus half Fe into phi P minus half Fw into phi P minus half Fw into phi W, or W is dE phi E minus dE phi P minus dW phi P plus dW phi W. And now I can actually combine the like terms to now write AP phi P is AE phi E plus AW phi W, where I can now write AE to be, if you notice now, AE would be dE minus half Fe, AW will be dW, will come from there, plus this half Fw will come from there, and AP will actually be AE plus AW plus Fe minus Fw. Okay, so this is the final discretized form in this scheme. Now let me put a few words about this scheme, or what do we have in front of us. First of all, okay, by continuity equation, okay, rho UE, which is we wrote as Fe, should actually be equal to rho UW, which we are writing as Fw. So technically AP should be equal to AE plus AW only if continuity equation is satisfied. And I'm saying it may seem to be, strange that why am I saying only if it's satisfied, because sometimes we may be actually, variable phi itself may be a velocity component that we're trying to solve. Okay, so it need not be ideally satisfied. We may be in the middle of an iteration process, or if the velocity field is coupled to the variable phi, so it's likely that Fe's may not be equal to Fw. That depends on the way we are solving and the assumptions that we made about the flow field. Okay, Now the second part is that this scheme is actually what is called as a central difference scheme. Okay, it is called a central difference scheme because we are using a piecewise linear profile assumption. We are using a piecewise linear profile assumption for phi. Okay, so this basically is what we call as a central difference scheme. Okay, however, there are issues with this scheme, or there are problems related to the scheme. So let me show you a few problems. Okay, so to show you the problems, let me choose a particular scenario where we are solving for, let's say, point P or phi at P using some values at W and E which may be known. Okay, so how they are known, we don't concern ourselves right now, but let's say phi E is 0 and phi W is, let's say, 100. Okay, and let's say in the first scenario, let's say let FW to be equal to FE equal to 110 units. So it's a flow field that satisfies continuity, and let's say DE is also equal to DW is 10 units. Now how can DE be equal to DW? That basically depends on the grid spacing. So let me say it's a uniformly spaced grid. Okay, now once this is taken care of, I can now calculate phi P to be AE phi E plus AW phi W by AP. Okay, and let me say this is, if I calculate now, AE was D minus half FE, right? So that would become 10 minus 5, that becomes 5, and then P or rather AW becomes 10 plus 5, 15. So we'll have, and AP will become AE plus AW, so that becomes 20. So if you calculate this, you should get FIP to be 75. Okay, now this seems reasonable because phi P lies between the range dictated by the boundary, or by the range dictated by the adjacent values, and this is especially when S is 0, the source term is 0. Okay, so this is reasonable. Okay, physically realistic. But let me show you one other example. Now let's say that FE and FW, which are equal, were 10 units, and DE and DW are, let's say, 2 units. Now what would be AE? AE was DE minus half FE, which becomes 2 minus 5, that becomes minus 3, and AW becomes DW plus half FW, which becomes 10 plus 3, that becomes 13, right? No, sorry, not 13, sorry. 2 plus 5, so that's 7, sorry. Right. And so now, and by the way, once we have this, AP becomes 7 minus 3, which is 4. And so phi P now comes out to be, if you calculate, it would come out to be 175. Okay, so now we have this problem that phi P comes out to be 175, which is outside, right? Phi P is outside the range of is outside the range of phi e comma phi w. Okay, and so why did this happen? That is a question that we should try and answer. Now, if you see carefully and if you are able to work this out, you will see that the difference between the two examples that I've given you is that in the first example, AE and AW were actually positive, but in the second example, AE is negative. So clearly, this is because of AE being less than 0. But it should not be taken up as that it would always be AE that could be negative. Okay, in our scenario, we have taken, in this problem, we have taken that FE and FW are actually positive. What if? So that basically means the flow is going from left to right. Right, the flow is going left to right, and there is this phase W, and this is the phase E. But what if the flow was actually in the opposite direction? Right? What if the flow was opposite? Then FE and FW become negative. And in that case, if that was the scenario, then it could actually be AW turning to be negative. So when F is less than 0, AW can become less than 0. So the problem is not limited to AE alone, but it's to both AE and AW. And in general, as long as D is, so if you notice, as long as D is greater than equal to mod of F by 2, which is what we need to ensure that AE and AW, so we need this to ensure AE comma AW remain greater than 0, we will keep getting physically realistic solutions. But the moment they D becomes less than mod of F by 2, we will actually have a situation where we will have one of the coefficients turning negative, and then we get an unrealistic solution. So this scheme, the central difference scheme, seems to be working best when mod of F by D is small. Okay, so it works best under this condition. Now this number, mod of F by D, is what we call as the Peclet number, and in this thing we'll denote that by as capital P. Okay, and we'll talk about the significance of the Peclet number very soon. Now, more importantly, if gamma was 0, gamma 0 basically means a scenario where the diffusion is extremely the diffusion coefficient is extremely small. Gamma 0 would mean that D is 0. Okay, and in that scenario, AP will actually be 0. Okay, if you go back and see, okay, D is 0 would mean AE is minus half FE, and AW will become half FW, and when you add AE and AP, it will actually come out to be 0 for a system or for a situation where the continuity equation is satisfied. Now in this case, when AP becomes 0, this scheme becomes unsuitable for solution by iterative methods. Okay, so this scheme becomes unsuitable for solution by iterative methods, and if you're not able to figure out why, look at the Scarborough criterion. Okay. So now we have lots of issues. We have one issue is that the Pecklin number has to be small. The second issue is that this scheme doesn't work well when gamma is 0. Okay. Now what is the remedy? So the remedy is what I would pick up as the next scheme. So we call this as the upwind difference scheme. And the upwind difference scheme is a scheme that proposes a key modification to the convective term. So the modification to the convective term proposes modification to the convective term, and the modification it proposes is that phi e, the value of the scalar at the phase E, is phi p if fe is greater than 0. We can actually say fe greater than equal to 0, and it becomes equal to phi e if fe is less than 0. And similarly, phi w will be phi w if fw is greater than equal to 0, and it would be phi p if fw is less than 0. So remember, last time in the central differencing scheme we had used the average values as the values of the scalar at the interfaces or at the cell faces. Now we are saying we are going to be using a nodal value only, a specific nodal value. Now, to explain why this scheme works and how this works, let me also define one compact notation. That will help simplify the mathematics. The compact notation that I'm going to use is a number called max of a comma b, and this will be equal to a if a is greater than b, and b if b is greater than a. Okay. Now what I can do is I can write rho u at the east face into phi e. Now this function this parameter phi e will depend on whether fe, this is fe, whether this is positive or negative. So we have this as fe into phi e. So I could write this as phi p into max of fe comma 0 minus phi e into max of minus fe comma 0. Okay. And why does this work? So why did I write this? Think of it this way. Let's say if fe was greater than 0, then the first function will actually give you fe only. So this will become fe into phi p. And if fe is greater than 0, minus fe becomes a negative number. So 0 becomes the maximum of the two. And so this term becomes 0. So fe phi e becomes fe into phi p, which is precisely what we are saying here. That phi e should be equal to phi p if fe is greater than equal to 0. Similarly, if fe was negative, then this becomes a minus fe becomes a positive number, and so minus fe comes out. You have plus fe into phi e, and this becomes 0. In a similar way, I could also write rho u w phi w, which is fw phi w, to be phi w into max fw comma 0 minus phi p into max minus fw comma 0. Now let's take these things back into the integrated governing equation. So we had phi e fe phi e minus fw phi w to be equal to de phi e minus phi p minus dw phi p minus phi w, and now I can replace fe phi e by the earlier expression that I just defined in terms of the max function. So we have phi p max fe comma 0 minus phi e max minus fe comma 0 minus phi w, sorry, max fw comma 0 plus phi p max minus fw comma 0 is equal to de phi e minus de phi p plus dw phi w minus dw phi p. And now let's collect all like terms, and we can replace this again by the common way of writing the discretization equation. So AP phi p is AP AE phi e plus AW phi w, where AE is, sorry, AE will be DE plus max of minus FE comma 0, AW will be DW plus max of FW comma 0, and AP will be DE plus DW plus max minus FW comma 0 plus max FE comma 0, which actually if you rearrange you could write as AE plus AW plus FE minus FW. This is a simple operation that you can try out and prove that this is what it should look like. Now there are some things that you should notice here, and how the upwind difference basically eliminates the negative coefficients. The first thing that you should notice here is that none of the coefficients are negative or can be negative. And let me just say this very quickly. Why am I saying this? If you look at AE, it is DE, which is a positive number. Maximum of minus FE comma 0. So maximum of 2 will only be basically give you it's 0 comma minus FE. So that has to be at least 0 or higher. So you'll have AE to be positive. AW again will be positive by the same logic. And same for AP, because AE and AW are positive. And ideally in a flow field where continuity is satisfied, FE will be equal to FW. The second concept is, or the second point that I want to mention here, is that this upwind differencing is based on the flow direction influencing the scalar value at the scalar value at CV faces. So what do I mean by that? So let's consider a scenario where again we go back to the same mesh. We have point P, point E, point W, and for simplicity, let's say the flow is going from left to right. Okay. So in a strongly convective flow, which is going from west to east, the west face W should actually receive much more stronger influencing from node W than from node P. What we had done in central differencing was actually to assume that the value at the face is an average of these two. Now what we are saying is that since if the flow is extremely has a large, let's say, convective conductance, then the flow should actually the value at this phase W should be more influenced by the value prevailing at the node W. Okay, the same way would be for node or for phase E, where again the value of the node P should have higher influence or should have a higher say in what should be the value at node or at this phase E rather than the value at node E. And the opposite is also true, that if the flow was going from right to left, so in case the flow was the other way around, then essentially at node E, the value at grid point E, or at the face small e, the value at grid point capital E should actually be playing a dominant role, or should be influencing the outcome much more than the value at grid point P. So upstream differencing takes this flow direction into account. So upstream differencing takes flow direction into account, when determining the value at cell face. To tell you in a slightly different manner, or in a pictorial sense, let's say that this is our domain, this is point P, let's say this is point E, point W. So let's say at node W, the value of the function is phi W, at node P the value is phi P, at let's say at E it is, phi E. And let's take two scenarios. Let's take a scenario where the flow is first going from left to right. So let me first draw the faces. So this is one face, this is the second face. Okay, so if the flow is going from left to right, so let's say this is the flow direction on both the faces. So this is UE and this is UW. Okay, in that case what we are saying is that the value at the upstream, or the value at this face W, small face W, would be the value at phi W, or the value phi W. And similarly, value at phi, or the grid point, or at the face E, will be the value at the grid point P. Okay, so this is if U is greater than 0. But let's say we have U less than 0, in which case let's say the flow is going from right to left. In that case, now the value will be at E will become phi E, and the value at W will become phi P. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. In the next lecture, I will provide some more ideas about deficiency of the upwind difference scheme, and then we'll move on to a more robust schemes, and from there on into discussing how do we develop the transient form of discretization equations, or the form of equation for transient systems. Right now, in this lecture we only looked at the steady state equations, and to higher dimensions as well. We are looking at 1D problems, so I'll also discuss 2D problems, and basically an extent 3D, which I'm not going to discuss, but it is a natural extension, and that I'm hoping that if the 2D part becomes clear, 3D part should also be easy for you to develop on your own.